Up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I had no idea that this existed. I actually heard about highly sensitive people, also known as HSPs, in a podcast episode from one of the coaches that I'm following, and my world was forever changed. Highly sensitive people is a trait that exists in 20% of the population. So no matter if you are an HSP, you probably do know an HSP. So in today's video, I want to tell you all about HSPs. I want to tell you the ins and outs, HSP versus introversion. What are HSPs? What can you do if you are an HSP? How can you perform at work when you are an HSP? And of course, no matter if you are an HSP or you know HSPs, all of these tips will help you deal and cope better with HSPs as well. So let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Arndt, and I'm a peak performance coach and stress management trainer. And I'm really excited that you are watching this video today because I think everybody should know about the trait of a highly sensitive person. I myself identify as an HSP, and as I already told you in the intro, since I've heard about the HSP trait, my world has been forever changed, and I hope that your world will be forever changed as well, no matter if you are identifying as an HSP or if you have friends or family members that are HSPs. It's super interesting to know, and I will dive right into the first thing about what actually is an HSP. So HSPs, I already said that before, make about 20% of the world's population today, and it's people that have a more reactive brain than other people. What does that really mean? There's actually a lot of research out there that shows that HSPs have a more reactive brain to the 5 senses. So before we jump into a couple of different tools on how you can manage the HSP trait, I first of all want to share a couple of different signs with you on how you can identify that you are in fact an HSP or a person in your environment is an HSP. Sign number 1 is that you are a deep thinker. You might be thinking now, well, I'm a deep thinker and a lot of people are deep thinkers, but it's really the combination of all of these different signs that create the HSP trait. And highly sensitive people are deep thinkers because they are so hypersensitive to their environment that they have to process a lot of information. So they think a lot of things, and sometimes they might even feel like you are thinking too much. If that is the case, that could be one sign that you are an HSP. The second sign for the HSP trait is that you are constantly and frequently emotionally exhausted by absorbing the feelings from your environment. So highly sensitive people are known to really understand other people deeply, understand other people's emotions, and really connect with them. So if I'm speaking with a friend and they're telling me that they're really sad for a specific reason, I can really feel their pain. And it's not something bad, right? We are very empathetic, compassionate people, but it can be emotionally pretty exhausting. So this is a really good sign that if you feel like the world's weight is on your shoulders sometimes, or you can really relate to what your friends are telling you and you still feel like you are thinking about that constantly after you talk to your friend, then that is a really good sign that you are an HSP. The third sign that you're an HSP is that you're very sensitive to stimulants, like for example, caffeine or alcohol. So if you are already super stimulated, right, by all of these different senses because you have the HSP trait, you might overreact to additional stimulants. So for example, I only drink decaf coffee because I learned that when I'm drinking caffeine, that it is super stimulating for me, and sometimes even to the point where I feel super anxious. So I just learned that, and now I'm just drinking decaf. Or same thing with alcohol. I am getting really tipsy super quickly because I am just absorbing, I guess, the alcohol in a different way, and I'm just feeling super hypersensitive to those different stimulants. So sign number 3 is that you might be really sensitive to stimulants. And the final sign that you might be an HSP, or the person in your environment or that you know is an HSP, is that they're very perceptive. Of course, when we are really reactive to different things in our environment, we are very perceptive as well. So if I, for example, meet a friend and they're not doing really well, I can tell really quickly because I'm very perceptive about obviously their emotions, their feelings, how they behave. I can just tell. I'm not even trying very hard, right? I just can tell if somebody has a different mood or if they are feeling in a different way. So when you are very perceptive to other people's emotions, to other people's feelings, that is a really good sign as well that you are a highly sensitive person. I'm proud to be a highly sensitive person. Don't think that being a highly sensitive person is a bad thing. I think that we have a lot of advantages over other people, right? We also have disadvantages, but let's be honest, no matter what kind of traits you have, there are always advantages and disadvantages. And I think that the highly sensitive person just needs to identify and be aware that they are in fact a highly sensitive person, and then they can really deal with that and they can take care of themselves in order to make sure that they are managing themselves properly, right? And so that leads me to the next topic that I want to talk with you about in this video, which is what kind of tools can you use when you are a highly sensitive person? So the top tip, if you are a highly sensitive person or if you know somebody in your environment that is an HSP, is to practice self-care. Self-care, self-care, self-care. I can't say it enough. Self-care is super important no matter if you're a highly sensitive person or not. But of course, if you are a highly sensitive person and your brain is more reactive to all these different stimulants, then you need to practice even more self-care in order to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and you're recharging your batteries. It's super clear. If you are super stimulated, you might feel more exhausted, more tired, more emotional. So you need to take time for yourself and you need to practice self-care in order to make sure to get back to these normal levels. And there's a couple of different videos on my YouTube channel about how to practice self-care, so make sure to check those out. But I want to share a couple of different tips with you that really help me. The first thing as a highly sensitive person is that I need a lot of sleep. It sounds super basic and simple, but sleep is super important, and I sleep around 10 to 11 hours per night. Yes, that's a lot, but because I take in so much and because I'm overstimulated over the course of the day, I need a lot of time to wind down. So not just sleep is important for me, by the way, but also just that winding down process, right? I need to disconnect from my devices at least 2 to 3 hours before I go to sleep in order to make sure that I can completely switch off from the tasks that I was working on before. So if you are an HSP that is super sensitive to light, sound, and visual stimuli, then it is really important that you're reducing your screen time. Another important tool, which it's not really a tool, it's more like a thing that you really need to make sure that you're doing, is that you are communicating, that you are pretty sensitive to certain things and that you're overstimulated and that you need to set boundaries in order to make sure to take care of yourself so that you can be there for other people. This can feel super, super uncomfortable at the beginning, especially when you have just discovered that you're an HSP and you are not really proud to be an HSP. But let me tell you again, I think it's really beautiful to have the HSP trait because you are more perceptive, you are more connected with other people, you can be so much more compassionate and so much more empathetic, which in fact leads a lot of HSPs to take on roles such as being a teacher or a coach or a mentor because they can just really cope really well with other people. So don't be afraid to communicate that. Don't be afraid to say, I need a little bit more time for myself, or don't be afraid to leave the party a little bit earlier and go to sleep because you know that you need that sleep in order to be on top of things the next day. It is really, really important that you set boundaries and that you take care of yourself. And if you want to learn more about how to set boundaries, I do have a video on my YouTube channel about that topic as well. So we talked about self-care, we talked about sleep, we talked about reducing screen time, we talked about communicating and setting boundaries. And the final thing for me to say is that we do take on a lot of stimuli through our eyes. So to just close your eyes is actually a really powerful tool to reconnect to yourself and stop that oversensitivity for a little bit of time. So if you're finding yourself throughout the day feeling super overstimulated, to just take a moment to sit back and relax and close your eyes for 2 to 5 minutes can be a super powerful and super simple way to reconnect and recharge your batteries. The final thing that I want to share with you today, and the reason why I moved to my workspace, is because I want to talk with you a little bit about HSPs in the workplace. I think it's really interesting to know how to deal with HSPs in the workplace, but also what your advantages are as an HSP in the workplace. First of all, of course, because you are taking in more information through your brain and through all of these different senses, you are really, really good at structuring information. Because you are constantly overloaded with information, you are actually really good at managing all this information. And that can be a super huge advantage for you in the workplace. So make sure that you're using that, right? Make sure that you are signing up for projects and things where you know that you need to structure and organize a lot of information, because you are really, really good at that. And if you know somebody in the workplace that is an HSP, then you should give them these kind of tasks, because those people will know really, really well on how to organize and plan and put together all of the insights that they got from a meeting or from a certain project. As I mentioned to you before, highly sensitive people are very perceptive people. They feel sometimes emotionally drained because they are so receptive to what other people feel, but it can also be used to their advantage. So I would say that highly sensitive people actually have very high emotional intelligence. They have a very high EQ because they understand what other people are going through. They're very compassionate. They're really great coaches. They're really great mentors, and they're really good with other people. So if you have a difficult, tricky situation at work, send your HSP, because they have a cool way to connect with other people and understand what other people need in order to resolve a conflict. So you can really use HSPs to your advantage. You just need to know about it. We already talked about setting boundaries and communication. So if you are an HSP, you obviously need to do that in the workplace. You need to communicate what you need. You need to set boundaries. You need to be really good about your own time management. Again, there's a lot of information and a lot of videos on my YouTube channel about all of these different things. And if you know somebody that is an HSP and you see that they are struggling with setting boundaries, then you can tell them that you've watched this video and that they should start to be better at setting boundaries to find times where they can recharge. And finally, because HSPs are so sensitive to their environment and so good at picking up subtleties, they're really good at building rapport as well. So you can really use those kind of traits to your advantage, because really being an HSP is a cool thing, and there's a lot of cool things that you can use to your advantage. And when you know how to deal with the HSP trait and make sure that you're recharging your batteries on a very regular basis and set the right kind of boundaries, you'll totally be fine. So I really hope that you found this video helpful today. If you have any questions about the HSP trait that I might not have answered in this video, feel free to leave me a comment down below, or let me just know how helpful you found it and if you can identify as an HSP or not. And I would really appreciate it as well if you would give me a thumbs up on this video. This is always really cool, so I know that you find this information helpful. And I really do hope to see you in the next video.